Welcome to Off the Wall, a podcast aimed at helping you answer the questions, what is the point of my wealth, and what steps can I take to make that vision a reality? Your host, David Armstrong, co-founder of Monument Wealth Management, and Jessica Gibbs, director of private wealth design at Monument, will tap into their over 25 years of combined experience in wealth management to help you answer these challenging but important questions. Interested in learning more? Connect with us on Instagram at Monument Wealth and follow along at monumentwealthmanagement.com. Now, here are your hosts, Dave and Jessica.
Welcome to the Off the Wall podcast. I'm Jessica Gibbs.
And I'm Dave Armstrong.
First question you're probably asking yourself is, what is this podcast all about? And this podcast is really aimed at helping you answer the question, what is the point of wealth? Because you've worked really hard to build and preserve that wealth. You probably don't go to work every day thinking, I'm going to work really, really hard today so that I can buy a bunch of stuff. That's ridiculous. No one thinks like that. Wealth isn't about having this product or this item or this document or this solution. And it's not about watching your accounts ride the market like a roller coaster. You're trying to build something. And anything worth building is doing not just well, but thoughtfully, sustainably, and in a way that matters to you. And that's what this podcast is all about. Right, Dave?
Right. There's a lot of podcasts out there. I think what we're trying to do is take the point of view of like, what is the point of all of this? Because a lot of people that I've met over my career look at wealth as something that they just want more of, and they want their portfolios to grow, and they're doing it outside the context of a well thought out plan. Analogy I hear a lot is, what's the point of getting in the car and just driving around if you don't know where you're going? I've been doing this for 22 years now, which is hard to believe, over 2 decades. And there's been a real transformation in the way people answer this question, what's the point of wealth? It's gone from people treating their wealth and looking at it every single day as if it was a piece of fine art. And now people aren't so much looking at their wealth as a piece of fine art that they just hang on the wall and they look at it and they're proud of it. They're looking at their wealth as if it were a tool and using their wealth as a tool to accomplish something. Most of the time when we talk to people and we ask them, what is the point of your wealth? They will say some sort of version of this. I would just like to enjoy myself and have some time. And it's that thing about time that keeps coming back. People just want more of it. And they realize that no matter how wealthy they are, they can never buy the time that they've already spent. And so they start to look at, what can I use my wealth for the time that I have in the future?
I like that phrase, that it's a tool. Let's dive into, before we unpack that very lofty question of what is the point of wealth, why don't we dive into a little bit of your background, Dave, which gives a little bit of context, I think, to why we feel like we could answer this question or help people answer this question.
I was recently talking on another podcast where I answered that same question, what makes me qualified to talk about this topic? And the answer is nothing and everything. So like I said, I've been in the industry for 22 years. I actually started out after college as an officer in the Marine Corps. And if you had asked me on the day that I got commissioned how long I was going to serve in the Marines, I would have said 30 years or until they kicked me out. And about 3 years into it, I figured out that it wasn't something that I really wanted to do. And while I was deployed a lot, just couldn't spend my money that easily. So I started saving and then started investing, and the internet was coming of age, and the ability to do research and learn about companies was right there at your fingertips. And I figured out that I had a much bigger passion for managing money and investing than I did in being a career Marine. So I got out. And because I didn't have a background in business, I went to business school to get my master's and then started working in the investment banking industry. So I worked at some really big firms up in New York and then moved around and eventually ended up here in DC. And then at my 8-year mark in the industry was when I felt like I'd rather be a pirate than be in the Navy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to start my own firm. So, Dean and I started Monument in May of 2008. And hard to believe we're coming up on our 13-year anniversary. And along the way, we met you. You became a part of the team. And I'll let you tell that part of the story. But it's really exciting to look back over 13 years and look at what Monument's become.
It's pretty incredible, even just the tenure that I've been at Monument, to see how it's evolved. I came to being a financial planner through a kind of circuitous route. I graduated with a degree in political science, which on the surface you may think, again, what makes you qualified to talk about wealth? But it was something that in my training in that, I started to get a deeper understanding of how you tackle a complex problem and how you communicate that. And that's sort of something that always sticks with me when I talk to clients and I talk about wealth is you have all of these competing priorities in your financial life and how to balance them and prioritize them and meet needs and wants and build a legacy, which is such an interesting question to me. These were all things that I was interested in. And eventually, after having worked at the Brookings Institution in DC for about 5 years, I transitioned to working at Monument. I was finishing up my coursework in becoming a certified financial planner when I was doing informational interviews and met a wonderful person who says, you should talk to my friend Dave Armstrong, who owns a firm in Alexandria. He could probably give you some good advice. I mean, it's amazing to think about how that's evolved from doing an informational interview to shadowing every once in a while to finally saying, will you please hire me? And actually you beat me to the punch. And then to being a financial planner at Monument and to growing in the role and building really wonderful relationships with our clients over the past 5.5 years.
It was so great. I'll let the listeners in on a little secret, which was I had already hired you within the first 15 minutes of meeting you. I just was playing it really cool.
Oh, now I know. Okay. I worked so hard.
Yes. Well, everybody appreciates all the hard work, but that's kind of one of the interesting things about this business too, is you find somebody who's got a passion for the industry, a passion for helping people, and you can learn everything else. Without that passion or that interest in it, people never seem to work out in this business. You got to really want to help people. I'm sure this isn't a perfect analogy, but like the medical field, I mean, people don't become doctors unless they really want to help people. And same thing here. When we sit down and talk about how we help people, and this may be a good time for us to say, like, how do you know if this podcast will be for you? I think one of the things that we do really well, and the thing that you and I really enjoy doing day to day when we talk to our clients, is not just dispensing advice, right? Because anybody can just say, I think you should do this. It's our overlay of our real and unfiltered opinions and how we are just not scared anymore to say the right thing. We're not scared to tell people the thing that they don't want to hear, which is great because we know that people who gravitate towards us, they want that plain and honest talk about money. They are not interested in the BS and the jargon. And if they are interested in the BS and the jargon, they just don't get it from us. We just don't satisfy that need that they have. But I think we also frame risk in a context that people can understand because the industry is so rife with terminology that nobody understands. And people try to use all these big terms like variance and standard deviation and all that stuff. When really the reality of it is, Jessica, you and I and the rest of the team, we've just become really good at telling people that there's no reason for anybody to be risking what they have, right? Their wealth, what they have and they need, because they need that wealth. There's no sense in risking that for what they don't have and they don't need. I think when we sit down with people and talk to them about what is it that they're really trying to accomplish, and a lot of times we hear that time back, removing the hassle, making sure that they can meet their goals and objectives. We really focus the conversation about risk back to don't risk what you have for something that you don't need. And we spend a lot of time talking to clients about how do you figure out what you don't need? And that's really where it comes back to what you and Emily and Heaven do on the planning side, which is tell them what they don't need to have.
And I think it's really just interesting listening to you. I'm hoping this is going to stand out to people listening, is that this feels really different than your typical money podcast. I think when people, they think about, oh, someone's going to talk to me about wealth, it's like you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get a lecture, or someone's going to tell me to spend less money, or how am I going to save more? These sets of rules that no one wants to follow. Just listening to you right now, I'm hoping that it comes through that I think how you and I and the rest of the team at Monument see wealth is really different from the typical industry perspective. And so that's what we're hoping to share in this podcast. It's all about sharing a slightly different perspective that we're hoping is going to resonate with you and help you, again, with that fundamental question. What is the point of wealth to you? What is it that you are hoping to build and accomplish through your wealth? So I think on this podcast, you're probably going to get a lot of things. The first off is probably you're going to be hearing lots of opinion and conviction. We definitely are not afraid to disagree. It's actually one of our favorite things to do is to playfully argue with each other.
Definitely. I always win, though. Don't forget to put that in there.
Oh, that's true. You are the boss. That's fine.
Right.
And then also, I think you can expect interviews with a lot of smart people. We have met some really incredible people in our industry who also see wealth differently and have a unique take on things. And we want to bring those people to you and have them share that wisdom and that point of view with you. And then lastly, we think you can expect to learn something new and interesting. That's always the goal, right? We're all lifelong learners here. So we want to make sure that that comes through for you as well.
I definitely think that the value that we bring to the table, especially hopefully through this podcast, is really just kind of cutting out all the BS and just having that really honest opinion and just saying things that I don't think a lot of people out there in the industry are saying, because whatever medium it is that they're communicating with people through, I think there's a sales component to it. I think they're trying to get people to want to hire them. And that's not what you and I are trying to do. We're trying to say like, hey, we just want to have our opinion and our thoughts out there. And we just really hope that people get something out of it and it helps them. I'm looking forward to that as well. And you're right, because when we talk about wealth and we get back to that question of what is the point of wealth, there's a lot of people that can answer that question. And that's why I'm really looking forward to some of these guests that we're talking about having on too, because there's a lot of people out there that can talk about wealth and can address that question, what is the point of wealth, who don't even do what we do for a living. So I'm looking forward to having them on and talking to them and hearing their unfiltered opinions on this topic as well.
So stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. We have some great people lined up. This is our episode 1, if you will, and we're going to have folks on. Everybody will get a chance to hear from every person on the team at some point in the podcast. We will have people from outside the firm on the podcast. We have a lot of good ideas lined up, and we hope you stay tuned.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thanks, Jessica.